welcome to the New Investors. Joining me today is the founder of the global food and agriculture strategy firm, AgTech. Please welcome Sarah Nolet. Sarah, thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
Now, you are an expert in food systems. You are the founder of AgTech and you're the co-founder of Tenacious Ventures.
Yes.
I want to talk about all those things. But you were born in and grew up in Silicon Valley.
I did, yes.
Can you tell me what it was like growing up there?
Yeah, it's funny, actually. I think I didn't realize how much of an impact it would have on me until you kind of leave and look back on it. But I was just kind of grew up in the middle of business stuff. And you go to a cafe in Silicon Valley and there's a daughter pitching a dad and a business partner pitching this. And there's just that kind of energy everywhere that you kind of take for granted. So that was very much part of, I guess, my life growing up. And my parents are entrepreneurs and engineers. And so it was just kind of part of what normal life was, I suppose.
Was it almost expected that you're going to be a tech entrepreneur in some type of way? That's the kind of goal.
Yeah, I'm definitely not entrepreneur, but tech something. Both my parents are quite technical. They're chemical engineers. I studied computer science. And so it was always on the horizon. But I guess if I'm honest, when I was younger, all I wanted to do was play sports. So that was the focus probably for the first kind of 18 years of my life. It was just mostly sports. And then tech kind of came later.
What kind of sports?
Mostly soccer, but basketball and track. Anything I could get my hands on, really.
Oh, excellent. Well done. Are you still playing? Do you still play now?
So since I've come to Australia, I now play beach volleyball.
So, lovely.
Yes.
How did you get into AgTech?
I originally studied computer science. Like I said, it was very much a kind of, I guess, a line from my dad, kind of go make money and then do something good for the world. And so I was like, all right, technology, computer science, like, get good grades, double degree, et cetera. Yeah. First worked in the defense industry, quite a technical role as a systems engineer, helping to build large scale military intelligence analysis systems, nothing to do with agriculture.
No.
And then decided actually to go on a holiday and kind of take a step back and say, maybe what's next? Ended up in South America on, I guess, what I now call an accidental gap year, because Americans don't really take gap years, and spent most of that time on farms. And that was a moment of, wow, this technology I'd been using and seeing in the defense industry could actually really help the agriculture industry. And I'm much more passionate about that. Kind of ties into the environment. We had a hobby farm growing up. I always wanted healthy food as an athlete. So I was so much more passionate about it. Wow. And saw huge potential for that industry.
Okay, so you're looking at what you've been using in the defense. So yes. Can you give me some examples?
Satellites, kind of remote sensing, machine learning. A lot of these technologies just could beat robotics, automation, et cetera. When you're on a farm, pulling weeds, it doesn't take long to start to say, oh, maybe a robot could do this instead of me. And that's kind of how I started thinking.
That's what I was thinking. Like, so some of the biggest ideas that you had then were, so say, for example, robots pulling weeds.
Yeah, I guess it was really seeing truly how hard it is to produce food and really developing a deep understanding of what farmers do. Yeah. Got me thinking about how technology could help make it easier for them and also help align with consumer perceptions. So there's all kinds of talk now about we want healthier food and we want to know where it comes from and we want it to be gluten-free and non-GMO and non-dairy and whatever. That's really hard for the food system and for farmers to respond to. And technology can make that easier so that it's kind of a win-win for the environment, for consumers and for farmers. Yeah. And that concept was really exciting and seemed like both an impact opportunity and a commercial opportunity.
So did you start then, so from that point you said, okay, this is the area I want to go into. Did you start the business in the US?
Not officially. I started sort of reading as much as I could. I started writing as much as I could. And went actually back to do a master's at MIT in the States and spent that time learning everything I could. So I wrote a master's thesis on venture capital and corporate venture capital in ag and AgTech, launched a couple programs for some corporates, did some consulting, did some research, like literally just cobbled together an income and tried to get involved in as many projects and opportunities as I could to learn about what was happening in the food system and innovation.
Okay. And then, so in my head, I'm thinking you're in Silicon Valley. That's the ideal place. It's still the ideal place for tech startups. Why did you come to, what brought you to Australia?
Yeah, so I was in Boston for about 10 years from uni and through that time in South America. Yeah. And then we moved here for my partner's job. So David got an offer from his company and we came here. So I always wish I could say that it was, the opportunity for ag in Australia. I just flew around the world, but it's just not true.
Okay. And so how would you can you compare the sort of startup ecosystem here versus Silicon Valley? And did you find the same sort of opportunities here?
Yeah, I would say when I first got here, AgTech in particular in Australia was just starting to become something people were talking about.
Yep.
Really seeing that Australia is quite strong in agriculture and agricultural research, but not much was happening in the way of startups. So there wasn't, there weren't any accelerator programs, there weren't any pitch competitions. But I saw an opportunity to help kind of create a lot of that here. And overall, Australia has really caught up in the last 4 years, which is, a big opportunity and a good chance for Australia to leverage a lot of that strengths in deep agriculture. And now thinking about it in ag tech, but it's come a long way really quickly because none of that really existed 4 years ago.
4 years ago. Yeah. So you're really kind of leading the charge here in Australia.
I can take a little bit of credit, but there's a whole ecosystem of supporters really trying to build that industry here.
Just in the terms of actually setting up a consulting business here in Australia, because that AgTech is a consulting business.
That's right.
Firstly, tell them what you guys do. Exactly.
Yeah. So I guess the real insight I had when I was at MIT, kind of cobbling together all those pieces of income and opportunities to learn, was that a lot of the technologies that were coming into agriculture led by entrepreneurs who wanted to make a big difference in the food system and really cared about, changing the world, were just totally missing the mark. The farmers just didn't want what they were building.
Why?
I think there was a lot of passion, but probably too much focus on the technology, maybe too much focus on, look, this drone, it can fly and take pictures and do all this stuff.
Yeah.
And the farmers would say, well, so what? Like, help me make a better decision about when to plant or when to spray. And they weren't really connecting the dots to that workflow or decision.
Right. Okay.
And so that was a big problem. And also, I guess there was not a lot of sophisticated capital coming into the space. Corporates sort of didn't know what to do with these little startups that were now running around. There just wasn't kind of a system to make that work.
Sure.
And so I saw, I guess, the opportunity to help build an ecosystem here in Australia that took the best practices from places like Silicon Valley and Boston in terms of building startups and investing in them, but connected it with agriculture and the strengths that Australia has in terms of innovative farmers and a great research system. And so that was the kind of idea behind AgTech, is let's help build an innovation system here based on Silicon Valley, but really focused on the strengths of Australia.
Because farmers, I think like they're very open to technologies.
It's a funny one, actually. So in Australia, it's the second least subsidized industry, whereas in the US and other places, Europe, et cetera, there's more subsidies. And so farmers here have to be really innovative because they don't have that support net that you do in other countries. Yep. It's also, as we've been seeing recently, a crazy volatile climate as well. And so that means farmers here are innovative and resilient. So it's a really great place to be building technology.
Now, speaking of climate, how is that really going to impact our food in so many ways? But like, what's the most imminent, like the biggest risks?
Yeah. One of the big ones is there's a real risk to where we can produce certain crops. So the places we grow wheat right now, we might not always be able to grow wheat, or the places where we have fruit and trees, we might not be able to have them because the climate might be very different. And
where, like, so could you just give me a couple of examples? Or like,
so for example, right now in Tasmania or in South Australia, there's wine regions because it gets hot enough and it gets cold enough. Yeah. In the future, if it doesn't get cold enough, then maybe we can't grow things there. Okay. So that's a basic example of the kind of thing I mean.
Sure. And like, are there any sort of, if we just want to put it into people's heads, how climate might be impacting the food system? Like, say, for example, meat and livestock, how that whole industry impacts the climate itself, and then vice versa, how climate impacts that.
I would say one change we're seeing a lot that is putting a lot of pressure on the food system is more awareness around climate and more awareness around the role of agriculture has made consumers aware of agriculture in a new way. Yes. And so you can see it walking down the street that there's more plant-based milks, or there's more kind of desire to eat food that's been farmed a certain way, whatever your preference might be. And that preference from consumers, things that we all want, is putting a lot of pressure on the food system to do things differently. So to have hens that are free range, or to, have meat that doesn't produce as much methane, whatever it might be. And that change is coming really rapidly on the consumer side. Absolutely. And agriculture is a big industry, and it's hard for it to adapt that fast. Yes. So that that's really a tough one. It's also, of course, an opportunity for innovation and technology and, new models that can create lots of value.
So Tenacious Ventures is your venture capital fund that you co-founded to invest in tech startups in the agricultural space. What is attracting investors to this sector? It's a big growing sector. So what is really attracting them to the sector?
I would say there's a few things. One, our investors are investing because they want returns and they see it as an opportunity. The population's growing, climate, as we've talked about, is putting pressure on the system. So there's kind of big changes that are needed and technology can help. The impact side of that is another big reason. People really believe in the heritage of Australia around agriculture and also want to be connected to our food system and see it as an opportunity to sequester carbon, to transition land to more sustainable usage, to rejuvenate regional communities. And so there's a big combination of kind of impact and commercial reasons that's really drawing people.
What would you look for in an AgTech startup?
Yeah. So I would say we're pretty big on team, and that's maybe something that a lot of investors say, and it kind of maybe seems wishy-washy. We truly believe in kind of execution is the only thing that matters. And so we want to spend a lot of time getting to know the teams, how they think about the world, how they think about the industry. The second thing would be kind of their business model innovation. So what are they doing that's going to capture or create value? Right. And then third would be the technology. So
wow, so team comes number one.
Yeah, that's number one for us.
That's interesting because you think the idea is going to come first.
Yes. And it's really tough, right? Because ideas are amazing and you need a great idea. Absolutely. But without a team, it just sits on the shelf gathering dust, and you need a team to actually execute and bring it to life is kind of how we think.
And so what's the ideal team mix? Like, is it there's probably lots of different types of teams, but like
it totally depends. It's a really interesting one, actually, if I'm honest, Sarah, because we're thinking a lot about this as we start investing. Is it that charismatic founder that sells the vision and the story, and you have no doubt they're going to be on stage attracting a team and talent, or is it the kind of smart, quiet, thoughtful, and it's probably both either, and that's less important than actually how they think about the industry and how they think about the business. So we might look for their kind of discipline and rigor around decision making. We might look for evidence of having worked really hard in any kind of capacity. It might be in sports or in another kind of job. So we kind of look for those underlying factors that we think will bring success.
Is this from your learnings in Silicon Valley that you've taken this?
I think maybe a combination of all these things. It's kind of hard to point. I didn't, probably a theme in my career at least has been no formal education on a particular thing that I'm doing right now, but lots of experiences cobbled together that have helped me kind of form views and really getting into it. With AgTech, initially we supported a lot of startups. And so I got to see from the startup side and the investor side what was working and build some of those views for how I think about the world.
Okay, and so what are some of the most innovative tech, like in agriculture, that you think could save the world?
Yes. I wish that it were that easy.
Yes.
And I wish that I could actually talk about some of the first couple investments we'll make, but generally a few of the themes we're really interested in. One is kind of automation and robotics.
Okay.
So there's a massive labor challenge for farmers. They can't get labor. Also, there's just kind of dirty, tough jobs that farmers have to do, spraying or spreading different things, working at night or picking fruit when it's hot. And a lot of those tasks are amenable to technology to do. So that kind of automation theme is one.
Yep.
Another is waste management. So we see a lot of waste in, fruit and vegetables that the supermarket won't accept what happens to it, or things like effluent or manure or, kind of nastier agricultural waste that we have to dig and put in landfills. How can we solve those problems with different kind of creative ways? So those are two of the areas, for example, we're excited about.
And are you seeing ideas constantly coming through this? Okay.
Yes.
Farmers to Founders is another project that you're leading. Can you tell me about that? And I saw something as well about how AI is going to be helping and how the farmers.
Yeah. So I would say AI is always a funny one. I joke because in agriculture, when you say AI, a lot of people think artificial insemination when you mean artificial intelligence. So I always say that's when you have to be careful. I'm sure you meant artificial intelligence.
I did.
AI is really pervasive. Machine learning, et cetera, is just having a big impact. In terms of farmers to founders, one of the really important things that I saw early on in this journey was the lack of involvement in farmers in this whole conversation around AgTech. It's a lot of let's put money into tech startups and accelerate them and raise venture capital and blah, 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 instead of time out, what are the problems that the users have?
Yeah.
And that was much more interesting. And so Farmers to Founders is kind of based on the premise that we should start with the farmers and their problems and their challenges. And one of the things we've seen through the work at AgTech and through my business partner in that business, Christine, her work, was that farmers are already coming up with their own solutions.
Of what they want.
Exactly. So they're already, making a new, app to solve a problem to keep records for their machinery, or they're taking their product and value adding it into a more valuable product that they can sell direct to consumers so they make more money. Farmers are already kind of solving some of these problems.
Yeah, sure.
And so let's help them build those solutions instead of always supporting the tech companies, often in the cities, to just build them there and bring it to agriculture. So we think both are really important.
Yeah. You are in a pretty male-dominated industry. With women in STEM, what do you think can attract more women to this industry?
Agriculture is a really exciting one for me because of this. Even though agriculture is quite male-dominated and tech is quite male-dominated, ag tech actually has attracted a lot of women. And I think that's super exciting because it's this combination of these two male-dominated industries. There's just huge potential for often a lot of women who've maybe come back to the farm and kind of married into a farming family, but are otherwise have other experiences, careers, education, et cetera, are coming up with some really innovative solutions and getting involved in ag tech and kind of using the fact that you can work from anywhere now to be on the internet and be involved in new businesses and new innovations. So that's really exciting. But yeah, it is still a male-dominated industry. A lot of our investors, most of our investors, if not all of them, are male. A lot of the farmers we work with are male. So that's definitely true, but it's not a barrier so much as, there's always an opportunity there. And it's just kind of the way it is. You got to move past it and keep doing what creates value. Yeah.
I suppose when speaking of male investors, I saw you, Mike Cannon-Brooks, invested in the Tenacious Ventures, which was great and great for your publicity as well, because once he's in the headlines, it bumps it up.
Yes, it's been funny. Actually, we had someone say the other day, I wouldn't invest with Mike because he invests in crazy things. We said, great, let's put that on a t-shirt because we would love to be known for that. And our crazy things will do well.
Fantastic.
We're happy to have his support, of course.
No, that's great. Questions coming through. What do you think the difference is between accessing venture capital in Australia compared to the States or Silicon Valley?
For sure, there's less venture capital in total here. There's definitely less focus on agriculture and food. We're the first kind of dedicated fund in that space. So there just hasn't been as much money and as much kind of professionally managed money. So that's both a challenge, but also obviously an opportunity that we're really excited about. So that's one. The other thing is probably Australia is a small market and can be far away. So a lot of the companies here will need to raise enough money to go offshore and expand elsewhere, which is something that, maybe wouldn't be true as much in the States, but really I think it's a great place to be starting a company. There's tons of government support. There's an emerging kind of startup support system here. So it really is a good place.
Are all your family still back in Silicon Valley?
Yes, they are. Yeah. And I miss them, but they can come visit here and that's kind of good for both of us.
Yeah, nice. This is from Lucy. Saxo Bank said that for the first time since World War II, food security over GDP growth has become the priority of citizens and governments. How will this change politics?
Yes. I would say that for sure, food and agriculture will continue to be a big topic in politics. It's obviously been interesting to see with the drought and the fires and of how much that is and isn't in the news here in Australia, but globally with trade agreements and swine flu and food security, growing population, politics will play a huge role. I guess the way we kind of look at the world is we can't do everything, and the opportunity we've chosen to focus on is really that innovation and how startups can drive change. So for sure, policy changes are going to be needed, and that's a big part of systemic change for our food system. We just tend to focus more on the kind of innovation and startup side of things, but we need people advocating for really good policies as well.
So you're focusing on what we can do, in the innovation.
You can't do everything, or else you'll never kind of get started.
True. So. This is from Gaz. What will the farm of the future look like?
If I knew this answer, then I'd be the best investor ever. So for sure, there'll be really different kinds of farms. That's actually one of the things I'm most excited about. In the current food system, we've had to make things a lot more homogenous, get bigger and do more of the same kinds of things because we've been solving for scale to feed each other. And in the future, with more technologies, we'll be able to have lots of different kinds of farming systems. So smaller farms that do kind of niche things, new crops, whether that's hemp or hops or different kinds of trees that produce different things that we haven't seen yet. Lots of return to native foods. We'll see all different kinds of size farms, and we'll see indoor farms growing in cities and on rooftops.
Plant scrapers.
Right, yes.
We were talking about these earlier, like that there's a whole system
yes.
in the building.
Exactly.
Is that going to be a thing?
I think so, for sure, both from a kind of employee health and wellness perspective as much as from a food production perspective. I think there's some big challenges of producing food at that scale, food at scale using that system, but it will be part of the food system. So I guess in general, I'm excited about more diversity, more kinds of things happening in food growing in different places and different kinds of crops.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Yes.
What are some of the myths that you'd like to bust in regards to AgTech? Like the commonly held things that people
Oh my gosh.
think?
One of the biggest ones for sure is that farmers are the kind of old guy with the pitchfork and the hat and, sure, she'll be right, mate. And, just government will help me out. Kind of like there's a lot of that kind of rhetoric. And I'm sure there's some subset of farmers that are like that, but the vast majority, especially in Australia, are just so innovative and forward thinking and truly good business people. Yeah. And so the more we can remember that they're people who are running businesses and they're also people with, families making tough decisions, I think the more perspective we'll have on some of the challenges in the food system. So that's definitely a big one.
Yeah. Some of the farmers that I've met in my time have been the best business people I've ever spoken to.
Yes.
Yeah.
The other one that drives me crazy is I won't get into the GMO debate and genetically modified foods, whether they're good or bad. I have my views for sure. My views would be that all of the science shows that GMOs are safe. There's questions perhaps around the business model of GMOs, which is a different issue than the safety of the product. But what's funny to see now is products labeled as non-GMO when there doesn't exist anywhere in the world that kind of product that is a GMO. So you might have like a GMO orange and, the orange is non-GMO oranges, like there aren't any GMO oranges. So it's just all this labeling to sell things to consumers when it's just, that's not even true. Like you can't even have that. So.
Okay, so just explain. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Just explain that to me again. Firstly, with the GMO, you believe perfectly safe.
Yes.
Okay. A lot of people don't. So that's one myth.
Yes.
Okay. And the second thing is the false labeling. In Australia, what are the laws around GMO in Australia?
So it differs for crops and states, but generally the Australian system is generally favorable towards GMOs, depends on the crop and state. But the point I was trying to make actually is one of a broader one, not just about GMOs, but that the labels that we put on our food now have gotten so confusing for consumers. And obviously companies are trying to sell, that it's better, et cetera. But they're starting to label things that if you know how agriculture works, like, well, that can't even be possible. So the other example I like is you can see now often on a carton of eggs, there's like, we have 1,500 hens per hectare. Is that a good amount of hens? Like how many hens per hectare should I have? Is that a lot of hens or little hens?
True.
And that kind of overshare of information or over labeling is just bonkers, I think. Like how can you possibly go to the grocery store and make a decision based on any of that? Yeah. So we've kind of gone down this path of trying to give transparency, but there's just so much marketing crap out there now.
So much.
Yes. So that's.
So if I'm a consumer and I'm walking through the supermarket, how can I read through all the crap? How can I read through it all? Is there something that I should just look for specifically, or is there somewhere I can go to
I wish there was. Actually, when I came back from South America, I'd been on farms for so long and kind of out of the westernized giant supermarket environment that I was totally paralyzed walking through the supermarket. Just what can I buy? I want it to be environmentally sound, but then it has lots of packaging, but I want to eat healthy for me, but what portion size? But it's just absolutely overwhelming and it's only getting worse. Yeah. So if I had the silver bullet answer to that, I'm sure there's a business in there somewhere that I'd be building. But honestly, it's there is no right answer because everyone's solving for different things, whether it's the environmental impact or health or price or convenience. Totally. And really that's the exciting part for the food system, that there are so many opportunities to meet the needs of consumers just in really different ways.
Do you think fake or lab-grown meat? Oh, we spoke about that. We'll replace animal products.
Yes.
Well, we have touched on that.
We have a bit. Yeah, I mean, it's a super controversial one.
Yes.
So I guess my view is that I want to see a food system with both kinds of products, with lab-grown meat, so kind of cellular agriculture, lots of plant-based products, and animal agriculture as part of kind of regenerative farming systems.
Yeah.
So I think there's an opportunity for all of them. But I definitely don't see it as a black and white kind of lab-grown meat will replace farming, or no, we should kill the lab-grown meat industry. There's opportunities for both.
Is it possible to really drought-proof a farm?
To drought-proof a farm?
Yeah.
I mean, at some point, no, right? If you, we had a farmer on the podcast this week, an amazing woman, super innovative, progressive farm, and they're just out of water. Like so they're carting in water, and they're hand feeding stock, and like, just what can you do? So you can destock, as in sell the animals, but at some point, like, what else can you do? So for sure, there's a spectrum of kind of practices that can help. But at the end of the day, if you don't have the basic needs, then, really what can you do?
So there's not like a technology, or in terms of like...
There's lots of technologies that can help. I would say more than technologies, it's probably management decisions. So when do you sell animals? When do you buy animals? What kinds of crops do you plant? The kind of decisions that farmers are making all the time. Right. But there's definitely no right answer, and there's definitely no easy answers, especially in times as tough as these. I mean, I guess a good example, we had a farmer again on the podcast recently, and they practice kind of regenerative farming. So they happen to have a lot more grass on their cattle property than some of the nearby farms.
Yeah.
And then what happened was the fires came through, and their farm kind of perpetuated the fires and burned more. And it was like, he's doing all these practices. They were kind of ahead of the game in the drought. And then here come the fires. It's like, at some point, nature is nature, and we're humans.
True. So many questions. What foods will become too unsustainable to produce?
That's an interesting question.
I think we were talking in the office earlier on about almonds and strawberries.
Yeah, almonds get a bad rap for sure. My instinct, I mean, the kind of research we've done and how we think about it is it's more about what is grown where. And so, there's certain areas of the world where we're going to run out of water. And so producing things that require a lot of water won't be possible in those areas. So it'll be that kind of reallocation of what gets grown where. But for sure, overproduction of any one thing. So if we just eat a diet based on fruits and nuts, then we're missing a lot of the value that legumes and meats and grains can bring. So it's really about that kind of balance, not, unfortunately, any kind of silver bullet answer, which would obviously be better. Yeah.
So there's no food that's like...
I think, some of them use more resources than others for sure, but I wouldn't say there's one crop where it's like, you have to stop growing that. It's horrible. It's more about the kind of balance in the system that it fits into.
Yeah. If you had 20 grand to invest right now, where would you, I'm sure you do, but like, where would you put it?
So there's a few companies that we're really excited about. Yeah. And in some of those areas that I said. So probably in the next couple of weeks, we'll be able to announce the investments that we make. And that's definitely where I'd put it, because that's where we are putting it.
Cool. And if you, so in the AgTech area.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
What would be a leader in testing out AgTech technologies? Yes. And is there an opportunity for Australia to become just that?
For sure, Australia is set to be a leader in that, and I kind of wouldn't still be here if I didn't think it was. Yeah. As I said, the farmers are super innovative, lots of different kinds of cropping systems and climates, and really Australia is leading the way in a few areas, just in terms of how much climate volatility we're facing. The farmers here have had to struggle with things that the rest of the world maybe hasn't been as exposed to. Yeah. And so they're already having to test and trial new solutions. Absolutely. Which is a great opportunity for innovators to kind of work with those farmers to build some of those solutions. Yeah, sure. So obviously water is a big one, and kind of water markets and water efficiency technologies, drip irrigation and different ways to make sure the use of water is as efficient as possible. Wow.
And how do you get feedback from farmers when you're developing new agricultural technologies? Are you out there on the...
That is for sure the hardest thing. And because it's a whole different network and, like I said, different language sometimes. But really, there's no substitute for just getting out there. Farmers are always super happy to have you, whether you're developing technology or just a consumer. So show up in a regional town and hang out at the pub and have a chat and go out and visit the farm.
I'd say it'd be fun too.
Yes, definitely.
I love those little local pubs.
Yes.
Yeah. What would you say, like, of some of your characteristics you would attribute your success to?
One for sure is just plain old hard work. Like I think there's something to be said for get up a little bit earlier, be organized about what you need to be getting done, and stay focused and get it done.
Yeah.
So that's definitely something I learned kind of in sports and something I've used throughout my life, whatever I'm trying to achieve. The other one, maybe less obvious, is not being afraid to ask questions. So just that no kind of shame and I just don't understand that, or I'm not sure how that works. Can you explain it to me? Or I need help with this. There's no point in kind of pretending you know more than you do. You might as well ask and get the answer.
Yep.
So I found that for sure to be
curiosity
helpful.
Questions. Yeah. You said morning, getting up early. What time do you get up?
5:15, 5:30, I would say.
Oh, and then because you love sports and that sort of thing, so you're probably straight to.
Usually I like to work for a few hours, take a break to work out, and then kind of get on with the rest of the day. It's great because kind of by 9 a.m. I've gotten the biggest, chunkiest task out of the way and worked out, and it's 9 a.m.
Brilliant. And what's the long-term, like 5 years time? What would be the long-term goal?
Obviously, the portfolio for Tenacious will hopefully be amazingly successful and with giant big companies having huge amounts of impact.
Yeah.
And I imagine we'd be looking at kind of our next fund and supporting those companies to continue to do well. And in terms of farmers to founders, really moving the needle on supporting farmers to create innovations and get access to the best ones. Brilliant. So that Australian farmers can crush it.
Well, I'm looking forward to watching it grow.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us, Sarah.
Thanks, Sarah.
It's been a pleasure.
Cool.